Okay, so now we're going to look at creating list views in the Service Console. And so I'm in the Service Console in Salesforce Classic, and this is a list view. This is not a custom one. This is one that comes out of the box with Salesforce. And I'm currently on the cases object, and I've got these options for these different list views, such as all closed cases or all open cases. And as you select from the list view, the list of cases adjusts accordingly based on the filtering criteria. All right, so before we go any further, we need to actually create the Jim Doe or John Doe user account. So what I've done is I've gone into setup, and you can search for the term users under manage users and click new to create a new user. So we're just going to call him John Doe, and we're going to use John Doe at fakeemail.com. And then for the username, this actually has to be unique. So put some sort of gibberish after his fake email address, because if you guys use the same user account, you're going to get a duplicate error, so don't do that. And hopefully you can figure that out. I think at this point you can discern that. If not, leave a question and we will figure it out. So then for the role, let's put him as the VP of Marketing. User license is we want to use the Salesforce user license. There's only 2 licenses available in your free developer account. So if you don't have Salesforce available, that means that you've used up your 2 licenses. And so you need to, instead of creating a new user, you can just move along and change case ownership in this lecture, instead of the fictional John Doe to whatever other user account you've already created. But if you've not created that second user account in your free developer account, then follow along with this. And then some of the other things we want to do for this other user is we want to make them a knowledge user. We want to allow them to use Force.com flows. We want them to be a Service Cloud user especially, because that's what this whole course is about. Let's not mess with any of the other settings for now, and set them in the time zone that you want them to be set in. And then you just click Save to create that user account. And so here's my fake user. So now we're ready to pop back in and continue on with creating this custom list view for cases owned by this user. Now you can create a new view by clicking Create New View. So for example, you can do filter criteria on a list view and filter down the list of cases in this example to match whatever filter criteria. And you can filter by owner, either all cases or my cases, or cases that belong to a queue. There's currently no queues created in our Salesforce instance. We'll be getting into queues later. And anytime you create a queue, it does create a corresponding list view for that queue. But we're creating a custom list view for the Service Console, and we're going to filter by all cases, and then additionally filter by case field, and any field pretty much that's on the case object you can filter by. So I'm going to filter by the owner last name equals Doe, and this would be for my other user in my own org. I could put instead contains DOE for a different operator, but I'm just going to say equals because I know that his last name is Doe. And then I'm going to keep the fields to display the defaults here. I could reorder these if I wanted by clicking and rearranging the order. I can add additional fields. And then as well, the visibility of the custom list view, you can restrict that to only be visible to you, or visible to all users, or visible to certain groups of users. And so for the custom list views, this may be on the exam as far as who you can restrict visibility for a custom list view in the console, or outside the console for that matter. And you can do that by public groups, roles, or roles and subordinates. We don't have, I don't think, any public groups in our org. But for roles, you could select, just specifically for a specific role, or roles and subordinates would be for that role and anyone underneath them in the role hierarchy. But I'm going to say that this is visible to all users. And so I need to name this as well. And so I'm going to say this is the Doe cases. And then I'm going to click Save, and remembering that this is all cases that are owned by my other user. It's either Jim or John Doe. I can't remember who I use. So right now, he has no cases that he owns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign him ownership of an open case. I'm changing to the all open cases, and you notice the case owner alias is me. I'm going to open this and change ownership. So the way the page layout is here, a couple of things that I noticed before we change the case owner. Couple of things are that we don't have our list view viewable anymore on the side, and I personally don't like that. To get back to the list of cases, I've got to go in and click the cases console component again, and it brings up the last viewed list view. And so I still have this tab open here. This is the account, and then the sub tab of the account is the case, and so the case is not a parent tab, it's a sub tab of the account. So I'm going to show you how to customize some of this, and we're in the sample console app. And so we go into setup, and I'm in Salesforce Classic. The service console in Lightning is really new. You're not going to have a lot on the exam related to Lightning quite yet. So we're going to just deal with Classic for now. But if you go into applications or apps, under the build section here, under create apps, if you select apps, here's the sample console app that we're working in, and this is for Salesforce Classic. I'll show you the Lightning Experience equivalent here in a moment, but we want to click Edit next to Sample Console, and you can change the custom app logo in the console to be something other than the Salesforce logo. You can further brand the console and change the header color, etc. And then as well, the available items from the drop down. We saw the different objects that I could select, and I had selected cases to pull up the different cases. And you also notice I've got the survey object available. I could reorder these or remove or add additional objects to the list of selected items. And here's where we set the primary and sub tab designation. So we looked at before that the account is a primary tab and case is a sub tab of account. I'm going to make case a primary tab so that opens separately from the account at the top and is a top level tab. But if we open up any contact records, those will be a sub tab of account, opportunities as well. And then leads and surveys are a primary tab. I could change survey to be a sub tab of either account or contact because I've got a master detailed relationship to account, and I've got a lookup relationship to contact. So I'll try to remember to pop into an account, open up a contact, open up a survey, and that way you can see what that looks like. Now here's the other thing, is this custom list placement. We're talking about in this lecture creating custom list views, and so you can just have the list view take over the whole screen like it is currently, or you can have it appear at the top and assign a percentage as far as the screen real estate that the list view will take up. Or you can do it on the left-hand side and assign a width in percentage or pixels. And so, for example, if you wanted to lock in a 300 pixel width, this is what you would do. Or if you want to do a percentage, it has to be 100% or less. And it's probably less than 100%. You can do console components, and that's where you can get into history and the macro browser. I'm going to go ahead and set those. So we'll get into some of these other things later as far as macros go. And then there's a lot of other settings you can do as far as aligning console components. And that has to do with how components are aligned in the footer of a console. You can choose how lists refresh. And so this is if you're working in an environment with multiple users, you can automatically refresh the console, either refresh the whole list or rows in the list if there's updates to those corresponding records. It's very helpful because that way you don't have users trying to grab a case that someone else has taken ownership of. And so I'm going to refresh the entire list. And then on the detail page, you can either flag updates, and the detail page would be when you've got the case open, for example, or you could automatically refresh the page if someone else makes a change, or flag those changes. I'm going to set that to flag. You can choose push notifications, and these are visual indicators that show that a record or field has changed. The settings you choose here apply to all of your console apps. You can select objects and fields for notification by clicking that link and clicking edit. And so we're going to just add cases to this just for grins. And then I'm going to click save to get back to where I was. I actually popped out of that screen. So let me go back and back and back. And so I have selected objects and fields for notifications. I can choose keyboard shortcuts. We'll get into that more later. And then some of these defaults, saving user session, that means that when they come back into the console, their tabs that they had open display again, and then they pick up where they left off. You can enable multiple monitor components, and that way the screen real estate can stretch across multiple monitors. It's a very common thing in a call center environment or service environment. You can enable pinned tabs. You can enable responsive lists. And that responsiveness has to do with window resizing, and it's not supported in Internet Explorer version 10 or earlier. And Salesforce is really moving away from Internet Explorer. So if you have any sort of visibility issues, especially in the console, go ahead and abandon Internet Explorer. Do the world a favor. No offense, but seriously. So moving on. So I'm going to enable tab hovers and enable tab limits. So I've worked in environments where agents would just leave every possible tab under the sun open, and then they would complain about the console getting cluttered. And so you can have a maximum number of primary tabs and limit that. You can have a maximum number of sub tabs as well. I think in the instance I was in, I set that to 5 for the primary and 10 for the sub tabs, and so they just have to close some tabs before they can, open up other related records. And then you can assign this application. Now remember, we're customizing an application that is a console application in Salesforce Classic. You can make this application available to other profiles if you wish. You can set it as the default application. So when someone first logs in under a profile, that's the default application that opens. And then once you're done making all these adjustments, which we've just done a lot, we're going to click Save. And then we're going to look back at the console by clicking back to Sample Console. And now you notice we got our list view on the left and the case on the right. And so we're really running out of screen real estate because my resolution is really zoomed in for visibility. And you can readjust this width beyond what is set by default by clicking and dragging. All right, so we're going to change the case owner to our John Doe user that we created previously in this lecture. I search for him, I locate him, and you can send a notification email to this user if you wish by clicking here, and then they'll receive an email that they've been assigned a case. So I'm going to click Save. And so now we see in the details that the case owner is John Doe. And once again, you can toggle between the chatter feed. And we see in the chatter feed that I've changed the case owner from myself to John Doe. Check out that time, people. Now, I am in a different time zone than this is. So it's like 5:46 in the morning. I've got a cold. So you may have noticed that my voice sounds really deep, which I think sounds kind of cool. What dedication to bring you this training, huh? So anyway, we're going to keep it humble. We're going to keep it real. I'm just going to pop back into the case details now and try and not take on a radio personality voice at this point. So now we've changed the case ownership. Why did we do that? Because we created a custom list view for the Doe cases. And so now looking at the Doe cases, and let me resize this because this is just not doing it for me. And we see that we've got case 1002 for Stella Pavlova, and it has a little bit of the detail around the description or the title of the case. And if you notice, when I hover over, it layers this over. And this is a good example of the dynamic nature of the console and how it can solve some of the usability issues that we discussed previously. So in the case details here, we've got the different related lists here on the left. And so you can click on those to see more details. And then in these related lists, you have your ability to log a call, send an email, add case comments, attach a file, etc. Add solutions. That's a solution article, not to be confused with knowledge, which we'll be getting into. Knowledge is the newer functionality, and there will be more on the exam related to knowledge. So you'll see a lot representative of knowledge in the course outline and the exam guide. And so now finally, let's go back into the accounts list views. And so we're in United Oil and Gas. And so let me change this list view to all accounts. And let's open up another account. And so this is a primary tab for Dickinson PLC. Let me close this because it's in the way. And so, for example, if I click on an opportunity while in the console, you notice that the opportunity opens as a sub-tab of the account. I clicked on that from the account details. So the account details is here, and then the opportunity is here. Now, other things available from the account details would be any related contacts, such as Andy Young. I'm going to click on that. And Andy Young is a sub-tab of the account as well. And so you can notice how you can start to layer these and how someone could get 5 or 10 primary tabs and 20 sub-tabs. and it get kind of crazy and out of whack. So that's why we limited the number of tabs previously. So what we've done is we've looked at creating a custom list view, and we've been dealing in Salesforce Classic, but let me pop over to Lightning Experience. And to do that, you just click on your name. I popped out of the console. I'm switching to Lightning Experience. And so this is actually a different app in Lightning Experience. The sample console was the console for Classic, but there's a different application called the Service Console that is Lightning Experience enabled. And so you've got your list views here, and here's my same custom list view that I created previously for the dough cases. So we're going to look at that here in Lightning Experience, and then you can click on these and everything refreshes accordingly. And it's a little different. We've got our chatter feed. You got your case details, contact details, and so you can adjust this and customize this. But the main point of this lecture has to do with the custom list views, which you can select, and it refreshes inside of the console, and you can create new custom list views from either Classic or as well Lightning Experience. So I actually misspoke. That's creating a new case. So clicking new will create a new case from the console. So there may be some way to create a custom list view in Lightning Experience that may not be supported yet. But another thing to show you real quick is you can display cases in a split view or as a table, and this will be taking over the entire screen, and that's how you can customize that layout. And then getting back to the split view, you click on this icon here and select split view. I'm going to change this to all closed cases because there's more of them. I'm going to select this thing called Kanban, and this is just another way of looking at list views or those being represented. This is a Kanban board, and this is divided by status or case origin perhaps. And so we've got 13 cases that are closed that were via phone and 10 via web, and so you can access these via the Kanban, and this is just another way of representing a list view. And then when you click on one, it brings it up in the console, and then you've got your list view here on the left. So the Kanban goes away and it returns to a split view basically. So I think we've gone on long enough about list views in the console. Let's move on, shall we? So next, a really cool feature of the console is the interaction log. So we're going to check it out next.